understand how this bump looks like. So now when I play with parameters like, for instance, the cornea connect radius, which is actually the rounding over here, it becomes much more obvious that something is happening. You see, as I turn this down, this gets much sharper transition between here to there, and I turn it up, it gets a much smoother transition. Much easier to see in the normal map view than to see it here, what's going on when you simply see the final rendered image. See, I turn the cornea connect radius and something is happening with the highlight up there, but it's kind of difficult to understand what's going on. Here it's easy to understand what's going on. It's even nice that, for instance, when you select a line that's somewhere inside an if statement, like for instance if I factor larger than 0, this if statement actually means anything that's going inside this region. So if I click the line up here, for instance, and you will see I'm still looking at the normal, you see it disappeared outside of this. It only shows the normal for this region, and the rest is transparent. It's because this line only executes here. It doesn't execute outside there. If I click on another place, you will see that it moves over to show you the entire thing, and you see the whole thing because this line is executed everywhere. So there's lots and lots of powerful debugging tools. But let's ignore the debugging and look at how exporting works. So we have an exporter built in now for 3ds Max, and all you do is pick export here, and you choose the Autodesk 3ds Max 2011 Slate Material Editor extension. The only input it requires is the directory where your 3ds Max is installed, and you just hit the OK button, and it will automatically install this into your 3ds Max. You could try this, for instance, with the scene I have here with some various different kinds of eyes settings using the eye shader. So we have one here, one there, and one called animal eye. So if I, for instance, choose the animal eye setting and I say File, Export this setting, just hit OK. We'll say these already exist. Do you want to overwrite? I say sure for now. It will export it and it will tell me that it wrote to these files and that it modified these two files. These are the configuration files that make it work. Now I will have to start or restart Max because these files are loaded in when the program starts, and I can now use the shaders. So here I am in Max with a scene with a couple of spheres, and I right now have simple standard material. What I need to do now to use MetaSL shaders is that I have to open up my Slate Material Editor as here, scroll way down till I see the materials, and I see a MetaSL category, and I drag in the map to material conversion. I assign these to my spheres like so, and they will turn red because it means it has nothing. It's like the error color. What's wrong? I see nothing. So I scroll to the MetaSL maps, and here everything I hit export inside the mill will end up. So now I have my animal eye. I can just drag it in here, and I will connect it up to this thing. I can double click here to get my parameters, and I need to click Fit for Sphere, and there we have our animal eye. Of course, everything works in the viewport interactively, so I can set the settings here and see the effects. I can change the colors and shininess and all these things that I had, pupil eccentricity, etc., etc. All work exactly as you would expect. And of course, it not only shows up in the viewport, but if I render this, Mental Ray will render the image. And it's not just a little bit the same, it's exactly looking the same. It's really exactly the same MetaSL code that is executing on the GPU here to generate the view in the viewport, and the exact same MetaSL code compiled for Mental Ray, which is then rendered with the full production quality renderer. If I, for instance, enable, I have an environment map set up here in my scene. If I turn this on, we will see that the shader will also reflect the environment. So there are ray tracing calls inside the code of the eye shader, and when it's rendered in mental ray, we will see it as tracing rays, and you see all the reflections, etc. So it looks very nice. And of course it reflects the surroundings, etc. Now, 3ds Max also comes with another renderer that is called Quicksilver. Quicksilver is a GPU renderer that is built on MetaSL technology. So we can switch now to using the Quicksilver renderer by basically going here and say I want to use the Quicksilver renderer instead. So I click my render button, and there we have the result of the hardware rendering. And this is a GPU rendering, so it's really, really quick. We can see I have a little animation here. If I move it, we'll see the render time is basically bang. Also, you see that it's reflecting the environment just like the mental ray rendering did. If we load in the, let me load up the RAM player and load I saved before the render that I did from mental ray, so we can compare with it. You see them side by side here. It's looking pretty similar, but there's one interesting difference, of course. Mental ray was actually reflecting the checkerboard here. This is not happening. This is only reflecting the environment map. So can we do this? Yes, Quicksilver can actually do this too. And that is the really nifty part. Quicksilver has a feature for doing reflections. You have to turn it on explicitly and tell you which objects you want to have the reflection. So these are two spheres in this case. What Quicksilver will do is to render these spheres, rather from the viewpoint of these spheres. It will build cube maps. And then, when there's ray tracing code inside the MetaSL shader, it will use lookups into these cube maps instead. So now you see we have actually reflections of the checkerboard on a GPU rendered really, really quickly. Of course, it takes a couple of seconds to build these cube maps, so it is faster if you do not use that feature. So that's a judgment call if you need that. If you want to use Quicksilver for previs, etc., you can do it with real reflections with the cube map thing, or you can do it like this. And even cooler, I set up here a camera view, and you can use a feature. This is kind of an old feature of 3ds Max. Down here, you have something called multi-pass effects. So I pick this and I say motion blur. And now, really important, the default for motion blur is wrong. It's 100% shutter time. Never do that. Always set it to 50%. Now when I render, the renderer will actually render multiple images at different times and blend them. And I will actually really quickly get a render even with motion blur, even though I'm doing this on a GPU render. So there you have some fun you can do with 3ds Max 2011 and the MetaSL stuff. The Quicksilver renderer, as I showed you here, which is a complete MetaSL GPU driven renderer, can be used for prevising stuff really quickly and still have exactly the same shaders that you're using for your full production renderer. We can even use motion blur in some cases for a simple thing like this. Maybe it can even be used as the production renderer. You have full MetaSL support in mental ray for the mental ray rendering, and you have full export from mental mill standardization version 1.1 directly into 3ds Max. So go forth and have fun with this. Enjoy.